here with the very talented Val Phoenix. She has submitted a wonderful film into our festival called LACTASIA. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
I think we always called it LACTASIA, but
LACTASIA.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. It's a brilliant work. I'd love to dive right into it. Um, yes, how did it come about? How long did it take? Anywhere you'd like to begin, we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, it's an epic, not necessarily in the duration of the film, although it is the longest film I've ever made. It actually started, I sat down with my co-writer, Alex Graves, back in, I think it was February 2015. Both of us had met on a master's course in London. I was going back to university as a mature student, and we were studying artist's film, of which you wouldn't necessarily know that from watching this film. It's a different tradition. Anyway, Alex said at some point, we should do something feministy together. And when we were studying, and I think what she meant was like, let's go to an art gallery or let's do something. But for some reason, we got talking about our own filmmaking practices. And she was really into horror. And she wanted to do something with horror. And then she said she had talked about she was really into RuPaul's Drag Race and stuff. And I mean, that's not like my drag that I know. I had come out years ago in San Francisco. My drag was more the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and kind of activist and, taking the pee type of drag. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So because we did have an age gap, a massive age gap of about 25 years or something, I thought, oh, this is a nice little intergenerational conversation. And so we started meeting and sitting around with tea and donuts and just kicking ideas around. And so the second meeting we had, so this is February 2015, sorry, I had some news for her. And that was that I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And her first thing was, oh, do you want to quit the film? Do you want to stop doing the film? And I said, absolutely not. I want to keep going with the film. And we were already talking about exploding body parts and kind of elements and gore and stuff. And I said, let's just go with that. Let's just go more into that, lean more into that. So the farther I went with my treatment, the more I was like, let's get more gore. Let's get more kind of body in a kind of gross out way. We'd already been talking about it as a B movie. We've been talking about John Waters and different kinds of film traditions. We wanted it to be comedic. We wanted to have a very strong teenage girl at the center of the film. Both of us were really into that. We were both into Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And what I liked about that was the idea of a girl who doesn't know her own strength, a girl who doesn't know her own capabilities. And so we created this character, Jen. There was a comic character there. We were having drag queens and zombies. I suddenly realized, it's like, well, we don't really have any kind of lesbian characters. We should bring some lesbian characters. So we created this comic lesbian character, which I was going to play originally. There's the beauty of making your own films. You can just cast yourself in it. So she was going to be a very minor character. She was going to be the cranky boss. And that turned out to be Michelle, who is another major character, who is sort of looming over Jen, trying to bring her into line, trying to impose discipline on this rather rebellious young girl. Anyway, that character became so important. I fired myself from being in that part and we cast someone else. Anyway, so we were meeting, we started the writing process. The writing process went about 5-6 months. We kept revising and revising. And then Alex had to drop out because she had other commitments. And then I had a choice. Do I take the film forward? Do I not? And I decided I needed to take the film forward. So it then continued into the production process. Lots of word of mouth, me going to drag shows to try and find drag artists, flyering at film festivals. I mean, all the kind of DIY ways that you cast and crew when you know you have a massive talent base because you're dealing with London, a city of millions of people and very creative people, and yet no money. And so that kind of, guided all of the kind of creative decisions of the film, really. Those kind of working within restrictions and doing it in as creative ways as possible.
Wow, there's so much. There's so many interesting points that you brought up. Firstly, I'm happy that you're here and healthy, and a testament to the human spirit and our own willingness to heal and to stay here to promote our art. Somebody else could have, just folded. So just brava.
Yes, I'm clear now. After three diagnoses, but I'm clear at the moment. So yay.
Fabulous. Yeah, no, I just think that's so important because I feel it's a testament to the human spirit. It's really physician heal thyself a lot of times is I feel underlooked. And I think all our artistic endeavors really can push us forward in dark periods. So I hope people that hear this can also draw from that strength that you've demonstrated in pushing forward and help them in their lives as well. That's number one. But I find it so interesting that it's like, you had these constraints too. And it's called a B movie because, people might think, oh, B movie, but you have so much detail in there. I don't even know, like, I understand like a B movie, but I don't know, could we call it B plus?
I like that. That's great. Happy to have a new term. Always looking to push the language forward. That's great. Fantastic.
Because I mean, like I said, there's so many details. You have locations galore. I love the scene with the eyeball under the heel. And we see that this took time and dedication. I mean, and to those like that want to push that envelope that way and that are trying to make a movie on a shoestring or no budget at all, what advice do you give?
Well, I was very determined, so that's the through line. I'm the only kind of continuity from beginning to end. I'm the only person who was there for every minute of every shoot. I think having a script that people are interested in. When I was advertising for the film, we would put out funny invite. We clearly stated it was queer feminist. So that was a self-selecting group then. If you wanted to come on board, you need to know that's what's pushing the film. And I specifically went looking for women for all the technical positions. I wanted to get as many women involved, putting their hands on the stuff, on the equipment. So that was important. We wanted it to be fun. We wanted people to express their creativity. So as soon as I went looking at drag clubs, I would give people a card and say, hey, and we're making this. And then if they were interested, I would then send a script. And that was what a lot of people would respond to. Like, this is really fun. Like, I feel like I can do something with this. And then that gave them a level of commitment. But the other thing is to just understand if you've got limitations, what can you do with them? So I operate on the principle of availabilism. That's actually a term from Karen, Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black. What is available to me? What can I actually use? So when we were first working on, let's say, the funeral parlor scene, which people will understand when they see the film, it's a dark room with a spotlight. But the way we got that is I had we were like, how are we going to dress this room to make it look like a funeral parlor? We don't have time. We don't have money to get all the stuff and rent anything. So we just got a spotlight, hung it, and then we exposed for the light rather than surrounding. So everything went to black. So then suddenly we don't have to dress the room. We just have one spotlight and we have a bed and we have something that will approximate a funeral parlor if you wanted it, and it gives it a spooky horror film look. So just trying to find ways to, what do we actually need to see on camera? What is going to tell the story? And I was the keeper of the story. As I went on, I realized I'm the keeper of the story. I'm the person who understands the story. I will ask for advice. I desperately want people's input because they have things to contribute. But ultimately, I'm the keeper of the story. Do we need that effect, or do we need that prop? Do we need that location of the costume to tell the story? No. Okay, then fine. Let's make things less complicated. Also, we guerrillaed. I mean, I will just say it honestly. We had permission to shoot in the indoor locations. We never had permission to shoot in the outdoor locations.
Wow.
We turned up at the cemetery and we shot. And I found out, when is the next church service? Because there was a church next door. Oh, it's coming. And so I would say to people, we've got 10 minutes before the church service. So we get in, we do our stuff with our zombies. There was a woman with a dog watching us. She thought it was hilarious. All the zombies coming out of the thing. We're like, hey, glad we were your entertainment. The same thing, we turned up in the market and we shot the zombies. It was around Halloween. People thought it was a Halloween promotion or something, you know.
Really?
And it was just like, well, we're not going to ask permission because this is a DIY production, and, you know, you just take your risks. So, you know, those types of things of just, you know, you're not necessarily going to do things the way Hollywood does it, obviously. It's just not going to be done that way. And then just finding talented people who want a platform for expression. I didn't get much out of going on places like shooting people for the most part. That was very industry oriented. But what I did get was, you know, makeup artists from colleges who wanted to try out horror makeup. And I'd say, what do you want to get out of this? What is going to be important for you going forward with your career or your plans? Oh, I want to try out this. I want to try out that. I said, great, let's do that. So that it's an exchange. You know, they're getting what they need to express themselves or, you know, try out their techniques. And then we're getting something that will help our film. So that was the case with the editing, a lot of the editing and the makeup and, you know, people who were shooting and recording and, you know, they all wanted to express themselves in some way and feel like it's going to, you know, end up in something that they can find helpful. So I just think a lot of these things, they have to be mutual. There has to be a mutual thing. I might be the driving force in it, but it's important that everyone who's involved feels fulfilled in some way. And I think it was, I hadn't realized how unusual the kind of practice was until we were shooting one day and someone's co-op actually, and she said, gosh, you know, I've never seen so many women on a set. I've never seen so many women who are making a film. This was just this whole trail of women like carrying things and setting up and everything. And I thought, well, it should be like that. That shouldn't be unusual in the slightest bit, you know, like, let's see more of that. So that was really important to me, like, again, expressing my kind of feminist principles of just like seeing women doing things, realizing their own capabilities, realizing, oh, actually, I can be in charge of this. I can, you know, be a DOP or a sound recordist or any of those things. So that's, you know, I just think if you've got a strong belief system, and it's a very helpful thing in sort of keeping you going, because obviously it's a very rocky path making a DIY film.
Right. No, it's beautiful. It sounds like you and everybody that you collected to be on board truly put their heart and soul into it, and it shows, you know.
Cool. Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Yes. It was interesting also what you said about the intergenerational conversation that happened. Would you like to delve into that a little bit more? Because, like, I know the film is spooky fun, but I also, you know, I think it also has deeper meanings and underlying themes. So I just yeah.
Well, that started with me and Alex, because Alex was a 20-something and I was not. I was a bit more mature. So our references were different. So my references were going back to where I grew up in New York, back in the 70s when the city was bankrupt. And, you know, that's when the punk scene started. And those things are very related. Alex's references were more like, if she talked about an old movie, she was talking about something from the 90s, you know. So her references were lots of horror films from the 90s, like The Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and, you know, that type of stuff. So that was really interesting. And maybe, and then conversations about just what feminist practice was, or beliefs, or the things that were important, the issues. I'd gone through a whole activist, period in my early 20s, which was like Queer Nation and ACT UP, street activism, like pre-digital, pre-social media, all of that. But Alex's references were quite different. So that was interesting. So I mean, we were just, chatting, and we did like a mood board and stuff. And we were bringing like pictures and stuff, and then things that we both liked. And some of those things ended up in the film. So in a kind of subtle or not so subtle way. So like we were talking about Sarah Ahmed, who's a queer feminist writer. She actually supervised my dissertation, but she had the figure of the willful hand. So the very first image you see in the film is actually a hand coming up from the ground. Now that's a horror trope, of course it is, but it's also the willful arm, the willful hand, which is like the thing that won't die, the girl who won't die. It comes from a story, like a Brothers Grimm story, like these people are trying to kill this girl, but she still comes up. So that's a kind of foreshadowing. And yes, it's a silly horror thing, but it has a deeper meaning. There's a lot in this film about survival. I make no apologies for that. It's about, a group of scruffy, ragtag people who no one really values socially, who get together and they're fighting an evil corporation. And, they're stronger together than they are apart. We've got a teenage girl. We've got a middle-aged woman. There's an older figure who comes in later, the old woman at the club, who's my friend Bev, who's a first-generation punk. She saw all those people, X-Ray Specs and all those people in the 70s. And she's a filmmaker herself. She makes incredible films. So there's a scene where they all walk through into a room and they're all there together. So you've got 3 generations there. And it's just talking about maybe a bit of continuity about how some of the problems we face are the same, and then maybe how we respond to them are differently. But, violence is around, misogyny is around, racism is around. They haven't gone away. I should say, when we started this film, we started shooting in April 2016. And for instance, that's just when Donald Trump had announced he was going to run for president. So there's a little visual joke in the film about the makeup. It's a garish orange color. And I called the color Trump. I thought that was hilarious. But I thought, well, by the time the film comes out, no one will remember Donald Trump. No one will even know that he even ran for president. It's such a joke. It's just, well, obviously things turned out differently. But that year, so many terrible things happened. The Pulse shooting, Brexit. One of our MPs here in Britain was assassinated by a right-wing nut job. Terrible things were happening. And we were making this film, and it just started to feel like, wow, we're like part of some weird emerging resistance movement or something. Like, just everything that we stand for in this film is just not what's now happening in the mainstream. It was just like a continuing horror story, and our story was like, something in complete contrast to that. So yeah, there are a lot of themes in here about I think serious stuff if you want to look at it, and but like shrouded within a kind of comedic mask, if you want. Sorry, I'm just checking on something. Which just is a way of like sugaring the pill a little bit, like, zombies, drag zombies. I mean, that's fun. Who doesn't love a drag zombie? A zombie drag queen or zombie drag king. I mean, it's just great. Like, it's just such a fun thing, but, as a way of showing people who are living, who aren't undead and will go back to being, where they were, but can like help be agents for the living. You've got 3 different worlds that I called it: the sort of norm world, the norm core of the people working, and you've got the drag queens who are living in this kind of exaggerated reality, bright colors, garish, all that. And then you've got the zombies who are the other world, the undead, and they're trying to help. So it's a kind of almost a kind of just a sort of fantasy of what I'd like to have happen, actually, if I had the ability to do it.
Right, right. No, I think great art can speak to people on many levels. So yeah, I think it's great all that you accomplished with this film. Truly.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you. What's next for you? Another project in the works?
I'm gonna, sending this out into the world. I probably, once this is done, because this was my Cecily Demented project. Normally, I make very kind of obscure experimental films with strange editing and stuff. So I'll probably actually pivot back to that. Much less complicated and quicker to make. I should say this is my little friend Agatha. Agatha makes a very brief appearance in the film, but I just, um, yeah, I'll probably. I shot something ages ago that I haven't really had a chance to finish, and I've written a bunch of scripts, but it's just sort of not really sure how to sort of turn those into stuff, Um, yeah, so I'll cogitate. I think I need a period of reflection. I think.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's so important. Yeah, because often in life we just try to jump and, you know, perhaps it's not the right time yet, or, you know, resources have to appear first or what have you. But yeah, no, that's great. And like I've come, to figure out in the course of interviewing so many great filmmakers that have submitted to this year too. Like it's such like you don't realize after you make a film, there's a whole other phase. Like you're never just done with it, right? There's the promotion, the just that alone, like PR is a whole other job in and of itself. And certainly very, energy consuming. So yeah, um, for reflection. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Being inspired by Agatha some more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reading a lot and just sort of taking things in, pondering.
I know, I'll ask you this one more question, then I'll let you go. I'm very grateful for your time. But you mentioned John Waters. Is there anyone else that you like? Um, you know, either
Oh,
main, yeah, who else inspires you?
loads of them. The main influence on this film is actually more the New York No Wave, like the sort of dirty, put everything, out there on the street and all that kind of stuff. I quite, I was, we had a lot of discussions about various filmmakers like Susan Seidelman, Vivian Dick. Uh, Born in Flames is probably like biggest inspiration. Um, so lots of those kinds of films where, you know, just sort of combining like different influences of kind of experimental things and using the city as a kind of character and all, there's so many filmmakers and music as well. Punk is a massive influence on this film. And goth. The reason the goth stuff came up because there was a quote I read years ago from Johnny Rotten, who's kind of gone off the rails, but was actually a really interesting person. And he said that people said, "Well, why? Where did you guys go to hang out? Where were you guys going?" He said, "Oh, we used to go to the gay clubs, because the music was good and nobody would bother us there." And I thought that was such a great notion. Nobody would bother us. And so I turned that into this, more of them going to a goth club. No one would bother us. And like, we can just sort of blend in. And so the idea of these communities mixing. And so I kind of quite like that when you've got that in films and filmmakers, that they sort of wander out of their little neighborhood into someone else's neighborhood and just, hang out and, and chat and see what happens. So, I think that's a big interest, a big influence, if I can say, on my practice.
Wow. Okay, I just want to thank you again. I really admire your talent and your determination. And yes, and again, just thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to seeing what happens with the festival.